okay if I go ahead now and share my screen?
You can go ahead, Dr. Cari, and go forward, but I'm excited that you're here. And Rosa, welcome, as well as Julie from Know Your Talents. Thanks for coming back. Dr. Cari, do you want to have us be interactive and have people raise their hands or step in? What would you?
Absolutely. And Rosa supports me a lot. We teach a class on Monday nights to real estate investors called Time, Money, and Freedom. So typically, if I'm sharing screen and I don't have multiple monitors, everyone like I don't today, then Rosa's my second pair of eyes, but also she's a contributor because she facilitates courses such as Mindset Mastery and Genius Bootcamp. So we came here to serve. Carrie called and we showed up. She's a tremendous blessing in our lives. And one of the things that she asked me to talk about was the psychology of sales. And I got excited about that. I've been an entrepreneur, self-employed, I should say, for more than 25 years. And one of the first things that I did was go and get a real estate license back in the state of Michigan. And then I found out something. The business I was really in was sales, right? And so I tell people that all the time. They'll go, I'm a graphic designer, I'm a hairstylist. I'm like, no, you're in sales. That's the business we're all in, right? So if you can't sell it, you can't move it. And just, a little bit about me. I moved to Arizona from Michigan close to 20 years ago. I was married. I had 3 children, and then I divorced several years back. And I met my current husband 7 years ago, and we've been married now for 5 years. So I have this extraordinary blended family. And there are 7 children, 6 grandchildren. And then somewhere along the line with all of that, the parenting and everything, I managed to get a few degrees. And I'm a neuroscientist and ontologist. People a lot of times confuse that with oncologist. An ontologist is someone that studies existence. And you've got some people that study the existence of trees or insects. I study the existence of human beings, and I observe human beings being human. And so Rosa teases me a lot about how everybody is just under the scope and in my petri dish, right? But I find that human beings are just extraordinary, and I love people. And then for the last 4 years, I've been joining my husband and also the Longs, Rosa and her husband, Brian, in real estate investing. So I could go on forever, but those are the things that I like to highlight the most. So let's get started. And one of the first things I want to do, and absolutely feel free to interact, Rosa will be reading comments in the chat, but I want everybody to just take a moment, and you can close your eyes or not, but I want you to imagine your mind. Just take a moment and picture your mind. So when you picture your mind, what is it that you see? A couple of people, just talk to me. What do you see when you picture your mind?
Blank canvas, open.
Blank canvas, open, anything that you want to paint on it, you can, right? Okay, that's awesome. Anybody else? Thank you, Brian.
I see sparks and lights flying in all different directions and highways going everywhere.
Yeah, that's what it looks like for me too, right? When I've had people connected to EEGs, one of the things that neuroscientists know to be a fact is that we're all insane because we've looked inside the human mind, the brain in particular, and there's just various ways that we all manage that insanity, right? But when people think of their mind, a lot of times what they see, and thank you, Julie, is their brain. But your mind is that busy place, exactly the way Julie described it. Brian's is leaning more towards the opportunity that we all have, or the place that we want to get to. where there's just a clean slate. There's nothing there. And people are able to achieve that through various ways. Some people go walking, hiking, some people it's meditation, but we all long for that. So I couldn't think of two better responses than what your colleagues provided. It was absolutely perfect. And if you look at the image of the individual that has all of those things on their mind, right? That's what it tends to look like. I have no idea what's happening there in the middle with the guy with the weapon. You know, I don't know, maybe they want to go to the range with Cari and, and some of us here on the call. But we have these things that just mull around in our brains, and they all carry a narrative with them, a narrative, a conversation. And I want you to think just for a moment what your narrative is. Your narrative about me, the narrative about this call. You're probably trying to figure out what I'm going to talk about, or you're trying to see if you like it or don't like it. You're trying to decide if you like me. Can I trust her? What's her background? And then maybe you're looking at somebody's expression on the call. This thing is always moving, always talking. That's what I want you to get. And when that's the case, it's a little difficult for us to get over into the space that Brian Jones was just talking about. It's like, how do you quiet it enough to get some things in there called creative? And a busy mind will take you away from creating what? Your success in real estate, your success in sales, but yet we're designed for creativity. The frontal lobe of a human being that you can see in the other image is where all of this creativity begins. But because if you look over there in it's called the Boca area, and I'm circling it with my mouse right now, and you see the basal ganglia, right? And the thalamus that's connected there. That's the Boca area of the brain, and it's over in the left hemisphere of your brain. And that's where all of that auditory noise is going on all of the time. And mine is like a stand-up comedy show. I invite all of you guys after today to pay more attention to what it's saying. And as we progress through this, you'll find out why it's important to pay attention to what it's saying. But mine is just so funny. You know, one day I was looking in line at a store, and I was looking at this woman's skirt, and I had all of these opinions, like, why is she wearing that skirt? She's kind of too old for that skirt. I don't know how old she is, right? Like, you know, and it's just going. And then it went from she was too old to wear that skirt to like, I wonder if I could wear a skirt like that. Matter of fact, I think I like that skirt. And by the time I tapped her to ask her where she had gotten her apparel from, right, I had gone through that, and it took me longer to tell you than it took for my brain to cycle through all of that, make a decision, and then use my mouth, my hand to touch her on the shoulder and communicate. And most of the time, we're not aware of that process and how we got anywhere that we are. And if we can master that and hone in on that, imagine what life would be like if we could be intentional in our programming. So this is what I want to talk to you about. And this right here is the model of your mind, apart from the brain. Some people call it the seat of your soul. I know just as a scientist that we have three brains. We have one in our heads, we have one in our hearts, and we have one in our stomachs. And they all have neurons, and they serve very different purposes. Matter of fact, it's my current life work to have human beings be more familiar with what I'm about to share with you for their success and well-being in every area of life than I ever imagined that I would be approaching at this time. You know, I was recruited in my senior year at EMU by Walt Disney. And I went to work for Disney for 10 years in human resources. And I was accountable for about 1,700 employees. And imagine what it's like for someone like me that's always been fascinated by humans to have those many people that I'm accountable for. And what I found interesting was how I could hire someone and they come in and they start working, guys, and they're so excited and they're creating and, oh my gosh, I'm gonna change the whole direction of my life with this job. And then I would pass them maybe 6 months in the hallway and I'm like, hi, how are you? How's it going? It's fine, right? And that had me curious. Is it something we're doing to them, something we're not doing enough for? How does a human being go from being that enthused about something to being that upset and complaining and wanting to quit and looking for another job and all of the things that would go on from there? And that is when I decided to go back to school and understand how we are manufactured. I never thought, though, that discovery would lead me to understand the framework in which we've been programmed. You see, we rely on two institutions to educate us predominantly. And now those are our religious institutions and also our academic institutions. Now, researchers, academic researchers like me, we have a joke all the time about MDs, right? Because they get all of the glam and all of the glory. But everything that they study in textbooks was put there by someone like me. I can tell you this, and it's just a fact, that we are delayed in our own human evolution because of what I'm about to show you. We're delayed because there's a refusal from academic institutions to teach this in curriculum in the K through 12 system and also in post-secondary institutions. And so why am I sharing all of this? Because I want you to get that this is proven, this is science, and a lot of times some of the things that I'm going to say to you, they've been spoken by gurus, they teach it, you know, the woo-woo people. And here's why. It's because it's not in those institutions that I mentioned. So someone gets a hold of this information, they write a book, and then they're on Oprah, and now, you know, they're your experts, your gurus, and then people end up hurt because they don't have the whole thing. So this image here is the image of the mind, and it originated with Dr. Thurman Fleet, I think maybe at least 70 years ago. And it is the perfect way to describe our operating system. If you think about the mind and all of that busyness, I called it narratives on the mind, right? But that's the software running. That's what's going on in the background. A lot of people don't realize that the modern day computers that we use, they had someone like me come in and show them exactly how we operate. A computer mimics a human being. And we over rely on them, you know, and my husband told me one day, he was like, I just wish somebody could put a chip in my head so that my brain would function like it did when I was 20. It's like, no, sweetie, that's not healthy. Like, you don't want to put anything in there, but you do want to perform certain things to have your brain operate correctly. But the beginning of that comes with understanding what's going on in there and how you're programmed. See, there was a time when you were first born where, you know, the most intelligent phase of a human being's life is before age 7, before you get a lot of language, before you get all of the disciplines that go with that language. You've been programmed inside of 3 gears of communication, that being illustration, command, and expression. And it started so early in life. And it started with something like this. Just sit there until I come back. Turn that light on. See the light, light, right? And it was illustration, command, and then expression. Stop, don't touch that, it's hot. And the more we got programming like that, the more we condensed down to whatever our culture is, our community's expectations, and we didn't realize we were being constrained in the process. Now, the reason why that happened, if you look at Dr. Fleet's stick man here. You see the subconscious right there. This is what it looked like when you were a child. The conscious area of your brain, the frontal lobe, none of that had formed. Matter of fact, it's not even fully formed until you're around age 24, 25. And this is why specifically the military and other civil units want people between the ages of 18 and 24. Who can tell me why? What's the benefit of having someone that has not fully formed their brain yet?
You can program them.
You can program them, that's right. And the other side of that, Julie, is that they can't predict outcomes. How many times have you looked at young people, even though we used to be them, and said, why are they doing that? You know, they'll scale, be on the 13th floor out on the roof of a building, scaling it, walking it, because they cannot anticipate what could go wrong with that. That's why they ride on the hood of cars and all of that, right? And that phase of life is called the warrior phase. It's a dynamic time and a scary time of life. Now, if you think about the subconscious mind when you're that young, I want you to look as far back as I continue at maybe what some of your programming was before age 12. And I'm going to go into exactly how the mind works. So we have the conscious mind, and the conscious mind is the space of our awareness. It adds meaning. I can look at this car right now and I can see there are some people on camera, some people are off camera, and I can start to assign meaning to that if I wanted to. I can say, oh, that's great. You know, there are some people that are really into this, but Sharon Roberts isn't. But I don't know what Sharon Roberts is doing. That's the fact. Her camera is just off. That's all that is in reality. But my conscious mind can make up anything. And we kind of do that all of the time. And the moment we decide something, Shannon, you didn't have to turn on your camera. It's just you were right there on the screen. But the moment that we do that, right, then we shrink again, just like when our parents and our teachers begin to shrink us and condense us mentally. Life is meant to be lived in a big, audacious way. And we've got all of the gurus telling us that, but not understanding what we do and how we're manufactured on the conscious level is one of the first strikes against us. Another thing that's really great about the conscious mind is that it has the ability to accept or reject ideas. You know, it's kind of like me and the woman's skirt. It was like, do I like that skirt? Reject, reject. Wait a minute, I like that. That would look good on me. Accept, accept, accept. And we're doing that constantly. It's happening all of the time. Even if our mouths are saying something else like, oh yeah, I really like this meal that you fixed, hon. It's great. But inside we're rejecting that idea, right? And so it's happening all of the time. And the conscious mind also has the ability to create new ideas. And creativity is something that's missing today. There's a book that I'll send the title to Cari. I meant to pull it up, but it's by Dr. Daniel Pink. At the end of the 20th century, he was talking about the 21st century and all of the technology and how this century would belong to the creative mind and people who are curiously engaged in life. The 20th century really helped to put us in that space of just programs. But 21st, we get to become unleashed, unguarded, and more creative than we've ever been.
There's a quick question here. Is conscious awareness?
Conscious awareness is something that is built into who you are, right? And now the association of it is with reality is found in Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. So their consciousness is always there. A newborn baby is conscious. Matter of fact, even before the baby is born, that baby is conscious, right? But we come along and we add language to consciousness. And intelligence begins to dwindle down as a result of that, right? Depending on who the teacher is. But consciousness is always there. It's built into the manufacturing of you, right? I hope that answered. But now what you become conscious of can be expanded by you, by your environment. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and the year I was born, you know, like I can remember just enjoying where I was living. It was the Motown era. The Supremes, they lived 5 blocks away from us, and they had 3 houses right next to each other, right? And then by the time I was a senior in high school, the city dramatically shifted. And it gave me a different kind of conscious awareness, right? Of, okay, that's not safe and I shouldn't be involved in that. And it gave me a new selection process. And now how that plays out in my life, that's rooted there. It's not uprooted. And my husband noticed one day, you know, Gilbert, Arizona is listed as the 3rd safest city in the world, not just the state. And my husband goes, how come we always have to sit next to doors? How come you never sit with your back turned? Programming for what I became consciously aware of early in life in order to stay safe, right? So a little more to help you to get how the conscious awareness works. And something else that, well, I'll do that in the next part, that'll really help you to get how awesome your design on the level of conscious. Now, I've already gone through this, so I'll just move it along here and go to the subconscious. So the subconscious is life sustaining. I don't think that that shocks anybody. You know, that it's the thing that's pumping your heart. You don't have to sit there right now and consciously pump your heart. Also, you don't have to tell yourself consciously, that would just be weird. You know, my hair is bothering me right now. So consciously, let's move it over to the right. You know, that's kind of just an automatic thing. If you're someplace other than your home right now, or you've driven to the location where you are right now, think about how unconscious you were. Like you were not present when you were driving your car. One of the things that I've been saying to my students on Monday nights is to notice when they're dead. One of the things in my work and in my studies that I've seen is just how a person is pretty much gone offline most of the time. And because that was my observation as an ontologist, I started looking and digging and found research that supports that. This day and time that we're living in, 98% of the time, we're asleep. We're not present because we have so many things that are functioning for us and on our behalf. Doesn't require us to be conscious, doesn't require us to program ourselves to fire in a particular way. And I don't know any of my children's telephone numbers by heart, but I can still remember my grandmother's phone number from when I was a kid. Why? Because that was required of me. I can still remember her home address, but I can't tell you the address of any of my adult children. Matter of fact, most of the time I just rely on GPS to get me there. And then I'll ask myself, why did I do that? I know how to get there. So that's the reliance that we have on the subconscious. And it's all too happy, guys, to step in and do all of that automatic life sustaining functions for you, but also anything else that it gives you, it loves that you give it, it loves to control things. Now, the thing that's unfortunate about the subconscious is that you cannot reject ideas. And then the thing that is extraordinary about the subconscious mind is that you cannot reject ideas. And this is why I tell people you have to be intentional about what you're putting into your mind, what you're accepting as truth, what you're investigating, what you're exposing yourself to. And when you think about the subconscious, especially when you're a kid, this is why kids believe in Santa Claus, because they couldn't reject that idea. An interesting study I read about 4 years ago showed that 87% of US citizens on some level is still waiting for Santa Claus to show up. If I'm just good enough, it's gonna happen. Steve, are you waiting for Santa Claus or you got a question? I'm waiting for him too, right? And even though when I was a kid, it was like I had questions like, how does he do this? Being that heavy, how is he going to get down, like, our chimney, that whole thing. And so there's something there where we're still waiting for this miracle. We're still trying to validate ourselves. Are we naughty or nice, right? And that all comes from earlier programming. Last, with the subconscious, it responds to thoughts charged with emotion. And I'm going to say more about that in just a little bit, because it's so important that you get that we're doing this all of the time. There are no demilitarized zones. There is no place you can go where you're going to get away from this. And it's because it's inside of you. It was built inside of you. Yet we know more about our microwaves than we do our own manufacturing. Microwave you can take out and put in another one with new features and things like that. But I want you to get that one of the things that is very important to your programming and how you were programmed and why you accepted and rejected ideas was because of the response you had to it emotionally. So I've already talked about this is us as children, right? So I'll go on to the body. Now, most of us don't think of our body as having anything to do with the mind, but the body, one of the things that I did when I was in undergrad, I went on an academic scholarship, but that was pretty much it. I still needed money and things like that. I was young, I wanted to do things. And so I had a number of different jobs. I delivered Domino's pizza. Matter of fact, I think Domino's opened up the year I went to college. And then I delivered newspapers, had like 300 customers, but I also started a removal service. My grandmother's station wagon became mine, and I started picking up bodies with it. And I had a funeral home that paid me $75 if I went to a location and picked up a body and dropped it off. And I had a partner, and I started this whole removal service, and it was great. And I can tell you my experience with the remains of a human being demonstrated that there's nothing there when a person transitions. So the body is an instrument of two things, your spirit and your soul. And that's a type that your spirit is tied to your heart. There's an energy, a field of energy that flows through a human being that we monitor. I've been in experiments and I've led experiments where people were hooked up to EEGs and they started thinking about certain things that we asked them to focus on, and their heart lit up, like the energy between their heart and their head really fired up. So that tells me that this body's behaviors are coming from where? The mind. Health conditions coming from where? Our mind. And people go, well, what about our habits, what we eat and things like that? Well, aren't all of those things living first in your mind? And then the actions that we take, are they not first either in your subconscious or your conscious mind? So it's clearly a tool of the mind. And I want everybody right now, if you on your camera, to just look at me, and I want you to raise your hand. Your left, right hand, it doesn't matter, right? Just raise your hand. Now wave at me. Okay, so you can put that down. Now, you did that, and it took very little for you to be able to do that. Your mind heard what my request was, and you agreed to do it, right? And then you waved. Imagine if you could use what I'm telling you to be able to hit the sales goals and what you want to accomplish every single time. every time, because you have a program, you have a new narrative in your head that now causes you just like automatically, as easy as this, to bring in new business and to hit your annual goals. So segueing then with that, I'm going to ask Rosa if she would unmute and read this quote, because I can't see it because I'm sharing, by James Allen.
Can you guys hear me okay? Oh, hold on. Can you hear me okay? That's okay. All right.
Go ahead, I really can't see it now.
Because you stopped sharing. I don't have it to read it.
I'm going to put it back up.
I think you guys are gonna have feedback if one of you doesn't mute in the room.
Tell her we're working on it.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Awesome. The outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are.
All right, thank you, Rosa. So I can't think of it being put any other way. One of the things that I see people do a lot of is try and reach externally, and I know I did it myself, for the right tools, the right resources, the right communication. I'm not saying anything is wrong with being trained and learning new things, new approaches for your business. I do it all the time. Right now, I'm actually in a sales training course because I'm bringing on a new sales team. And those methodologies work well, but have you ever noticed that you'll have people that they're sitting in class, they're doing great, and they call you and they're like, hey, Gary, hey, Steve, why did you do so well with that training, right? And it's not working for me. And it's not the training that's not working for them. It's the mindset. It's what's going on. And, you know, today you hear mindset, it's used everywhere. You know, mindset, mindset, mindset. It's almost overused, in my opinion, because it's not carrying with it what it is and what it takes to establish a powerful mindset. It's just not understood. So let's continue. I'll go back to my PowerPoint. And continue to share. All right. So that quote came, I think that's at least 100 years old, that James Allen wrote the book, As a Man Thinketh. I encourage everybody after today, if you've never read it, get it. It's on Audible. It's really good and it's very transformative. And the perfect match for expanding this conversation that I'm bringing you into today. So as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And I've heard so many debates over so many years, and this is where you really start to see academic institutions and religious institutions, again, the two that we rely on in this country the most to educate us, kind of debate about that. Where is the heart? Now, I was always in the mind, started with psychology, went on to the science of the human mind. But I made a really interesting discovery when a family member of mine required a heart transplant. And after she had gotten the transplant, she was different. And I was going to see her in the hospital. It was my mother-in-law. I was going to see her in the hospital. And one day she looked at me and she said, I don't feel like myself. And she was very, very depressed. And when I looked at her, it really spooked me because the person looking back at me did not look like her either. It was really interesting to the point that it flipped my entire thesis. And I started studying heart transplant patients and made some amazing discoveries. Now it's more well known today than it was back then. But, you know, there was one example I'll never forget of a man who had, he was an accountant at the time. He was 49 years old. His wife described him as kind of the stereotype of an accountant, you know, kind of nerdy, very introverted. And he had a heart transplant. And she said she noticed on the ride home that he changed his favorite radio station and was kind of like rocking out a bit. And then a month or so later, he comes home and he has a guitar. And she's like, oh, great. He's got this new lease on life. And he's going to study guitar. And she goes into another room and she starts hearing him play the guitar and like play it well. And they discovered later that he had received the heart of a 15-year-old musician. And then there was a woman that had the heart. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't a woman, it was a young girl. She was 11 years old. And every night she would have these nightmares about being strangled. And if you ever look it up online, you'll find that she had the heart of, I think, an 8-year-old murder victim. I might be reversing them. And she was dreaming about the experience of being murdered. It was in the heart, right? So as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And it even led to the capture or the arrest, at least, of the individual responsible for the murder of the other child. And so that fascinated me. And I found that the neurons in our heart holds on to feelings and images and things that we're passionate about. But yet, and I know because I was an educator for a while, but also I went through our academic institutions. The message that we get is to kill all of that off and to separate yourself from the pack and win. Get on top and stay on top by any means necessary. And definitely working for a large company like I did with Disney. I was programmed by the earlier veterans of big business, right? The guys that wore the uniform, they would hit the floor, they had on gray pants, crisp white shirts, and navy blue jackets with their rippled paisley ties. And they were like, we gotta move, you gotta move with purpose. And there was no space in there for your heart. The heart was something that you had to kill off. And, you know, some of you probably heard Oprah Winfrey talk about how difficult it was for her to deliver tragic news to people. And she would cry and they're like, you're never going to make it in this business unless you learn to put your feelings away. Now, here we are going back to the reference with Dr. Pink earlier. We're in the 21st century where creativity and the things that come out of your heart are important. And they're going to make the difference. So let's bring all of this together. You look at the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, they use the body. And all of a sudden, you see the results out in the world. If you look around your surroundings right now, it will mirror what you believe on the inside, what your programming is on the inside. You know, a lot of times, I laugh, but it's not always funny about my inability to take a nap in the middle of the day. And a couple of weeks ago, I woke up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and I had just went to sleep at 12:30 and I had a big day. And so I was like, well, it's nothing to do but get through it. And Rosa was like, Cari, why don't you take a nap? And I told her, I said, I can't. I've tried and I'll try again, but I don't know if I'll succeed. Because my mother told me when I was 12 years old that only a trifling woman takes naps in the middle of the day. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, I don't want to be trifling. That's horrible. I don't want to be that person. So I accepted that programming. And today I'm 58 years old and I still can't take a nap. I didn't even know what trifling meant until I was 17. I finally looked it up one day, and it means like, not coming up to full measure or subpar. And my mother was emphatic about her children being successful and doing the best that we could. And I know she was trying to give me an extraordinary life, but that was my mama. And because of my emotional connection to my mama, I accepted that. So I want to challenge you to look all around you, especially in the money conversation, and ask yourself, the results that I'm producing in my business, in sales, is that connected to anything emotionally that might be blocking me from having more? Is my home set up the way I would set it up on the level of my heart? Am I demonstrating in the world who it is that I want to be fully expressed as? And, for a lot of people, this is a scary conversation. I had a guy tell me when I was presenting a few months ago, he said, my mom was a bona fide hippie. And the stuff that you say to me scares me because of everything that he associated with this type of thinking. And I had to work with him one-on-one for him to get, this isn't anything other than science. Now, everything in the universe has a vibration. Albert Einstein, just his body of work today, unlike other thought leaders in the categories of any science, is still solid. There's been very little to come up and challenge it, but it has been expanded. And he's the one that gave us the law of vibration. It's paired with his theory of relativity. Some people refer to the law of vibration as being the law of attraction. But all things are in a state of vibration. And we control our personal vibration by choosing our thoughts and the feelings that we have that come from those thoughts. See, a feeling, I want you to get, is nothing more than just a conscious awareness of a particular vibration. And that vibration could be coming from you and you're aware of it, especially those of us that have had children. I can remember me and my ex with our firstborn coming home from the hospital and going in and just laying the baby in the center of our bed and staring at him. And he was on one side and I was on one side, and we just kept staring at the baby. And then we would look at each other, and there we were in this conscious awareness of what? The fact that we had extended our family, we had given life, we had a child, and a whole world showed up with that. And then we also naturally attract people and opportunities which are in harmony with our personal vibration. We repel all other varieties of that. And we do it in such a fast manner. Like I was saying about me in line with the skirt. I don't like that person. Something about them just rubs me the wrong way. I don't want anything to do with that person. Oh, did you listen to the training today? No. As soon as I found out who was presenting, I checked out, right? And we don't look inside to see, why is this feeling there? This thought that I had, even before the thoughts about the other person. See, guys, there's something happening underneath. Always remember that area of your brain has a narrative going. And something got triggered the moment somebody came on and they had on blue, right? I don't like blue, blah, blah, blah. And there's all of that. And then now we have these feelings and we reject everything without going back to the source of where it came from, our own vibration. That's what is important to get. What is your vibration? And we miss things like that. We miss so many opportunities because we killed off the messenger. We killed off the environment. We killed off. We're all killers. We decide, and that's it. And I'm quick to decide without realizing the word decision, okay, or to decide is in the killing family. Suicide, pesticide, right? So you don't want to decide. You want to powerfully choose every day. You want to choose your own vibration, and you want to have that vibration be so high that it brings to you what it is you want and who you want to work with. Another compelling reason to monitor your thoughts and your vibration is because the thing that we observe the most in life, whether you're aware of it or not, is ourselves. Our five senses constantly pay attention to you more than it does anything else, because it's always waiting to serve you. So let me go back here for a minute. Back here. So you see the results that get produced, right? Now, this is where it starts to all come together. Your response to the results in your life, okay? You get your sales reports for the month, however that comes out, and you look at it and you go, yeah, I didn't like that. In that moment, you're thinking something, you're feeling something, your five senses picks up on it, and it can't distinguish whether that's a good emotion or a bad emotion. It just knows that you felt something. So it goes, oh, guess what? Cari really liked that. Brian really loved it. Let's give him some more of that next month. Let's give some to Dwight as well. Because you felt something and you demonstrated it and your senses picked up on it. The moment you gave it emotion and charged it with emotion, and charge doesn't mean there's this big giant yelp or anything, but anything that you felt in your chest in that moment, your brain, the subconscious, was synced with the mind heart. It thought you liked it and you wanted more, and so it gives you more. And that's how we end up repeating the cycle. And I hear people say all the time, no matter what I do, I can't seem to get this, and I can't seem to get that, and I can't figure it out. And the first thing I ask them is, tell me what you think. Well, I don't know. Okay, well, tell me what you feel. And your thoughts and your feelings, if they're disturbing enough, if they are alarming enough, will trigger the amygdala, which is also in the left hemisphere of the brain, and it picks up on the Broca area, which is the auditory part of your brain, right? I don't want to be too geeky, but there's something in your ear, in this area of your brain, that's almost like a microphone. And it's listening to your thoughts, your narrative, as much as it's listening to everybody else. This is why people who don't have the ability to hear can still hear, because we have this internal mechanism that's always paying attention. And so the amygdala, a lot of people are very familiar with it. But what they're not familiar with, guys, and you have to really, really get this, is that this thing is no bigger than an almond. It's something there that evolved with us, and it's very, very primitive. And what it does is it triggers a fight, flight, or freeze response. I know freeze has become very popular, but freeze is actually a part of flight, because today we don't take off running anymore. So we freeze. So it's really only two, and that's fight or flight. And you won't go near, because of the subconscious being life-sustaining, anything that's going to cause you to suffer. So if your commentary, your narrative inside of your head is, this sucks, that we have to do this, or I have to do that, or I have to make these calls, guess what? Then it just sucks. That's how it is. And life becomes fixed, because your amygdala is never going to let you go near anything that it thinks is going to cause you pain and suffering. So that's why we can't get to our dreams and our goals the way that we want to. So we try to solve our problems by analyzing our results, looking at the evidence of our performance the month before, how we didn't hit our goals and things like that. It's nothing wrong with that, but our application and response to it is typically, okay, well, let me go harder. Let me try harder. And that takes me back to what Cari was talking about earlier. She was sharing with me how you guys were looking at overwhelm and burnout. You will definitely burn out if you're living life from the outside in. But if you can really get a hold of the inside out, right, and begin to learn and reprogram yourself, it'll make a huge difference. So we look at our results and we go, okay, I need the right book, I need the right tools. And who's observing all of that, again, is you. And remember this, those things begin to cycle, because here we are repeating our results and what we don't like and charging it with more emotion. And that puts us into what we call the bondage cycle. How do you feel about the challenges in your life and in your business? How do you feel about them? And that's something that I know your first education has not taught you. When I worked in human resources, I would sit in staff meetings and we would go over like who was out on leave. And, Cari, did you know that Disney has 5 facilities in Michigan? They're in Livonia, Novi, Detroit. Yeah, a lot of people don't know Disney is there. So 5 facilities there. And we were growing and expanding our duplication. That's their whole media division there. And we would have leaders, the women would go out and they have a baby. And I could hear in the staff meetings, it's like, oh, I wonder if that person is going to come back after maternity leave, and I hadn't had my first child yet. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't they come back? And they're like, oh, you don't know the bond, that a mother has with a baby. It's pretty strong. And then they would go, well, hopefully she'll be able to get over it and get back. I thought that was a really strange thing, right? And I would look at how, and this is me going back to the employees I'm passing in the hall, unable to make a contribution, unable to self-express. You got to shut your heart down for 40 hours a week, sometimes more. And that's why we give you personal days. Deal with your nonsense on your days off, right? Guys, like, this is so not aligned with any way that we're manufactured at all. Not at all. And the people that were awarded were the people that could abandon their children to something to call daycare as fast as they could, 6 weeks, and get back in that pencil skirt and be back at work. That's when you were a champion. It was like insane. And we had that in our culture. And then I had my baby and I started to feel like a failure because I would come into my office and just cry into the blanket. I couldn't shut my emotions off. I wanted to be at home with my baby. And I thought, man, I'm just not a good woman. So that was the programming that we've been given. And I want a volunteer right now. Let's see. Hurley, will you read that for me?
What am I reading? Let's talk about programs.
Yes, read the little triangles.
Okay, let's talk about programs. Paris in the spring. Once in a lifetime. Bird in the hand. Bird in the hand. Slow men at work.
Perfect. Now go up to the first one and read that one
Paris
again.
in the spring.
Yeah,
Once in a lifetime.
yeah.
Okay.
And thank you so much. Now, see, she caught it. Most people catch it around the third one. Sometimes people don't catch it at all, right? I presented this, guys, to like it was 40 regional vice presidents for Sprouts, and all of the CEOs were sitting in the front. It was the best day of my life when all of their CEOs filtered out the word, right? Because they were too busy to be bothered with me all before then. It was hilarious, right? And their RVPs had a chance to see that. But this is a demonstration of our filtering system. Literally how we're so biased in our own lives and our successes and our achievements and anything that could help us to move our game forward is demonstrated in this exercise. It's been around a long time. I've thought about not using it. You can even see the image of it. I can't find a new crisper looking one. It's been around a long time, but it makes the point. I want you to ask yourself, what are you filtering out? See, and why that's important is because that's why you're in the bondage cycle. Something new will come along that could make a contribution to you in your sales game, in your business, but you can't because you're filtering it out. You're going Paris in the spring, and that's that. And, you know, other people were saying like, no, look closer. And you're coming back, Paris in the spring. There is more. There is more going on, and you can't see it. So how do we get back to dreaming big? And for me, I have to admit, this was a challenge for me. You know, I've thought of myself often as just being a very serious person. A lot of people don't know this, especially after they've been talking to me for a while. I'm introverted. And I've really had to force myself to be more extroverted. I'm sure Carrie Sparks never would think I'm an introvert, but I can tell you it took me a long time to get there and a recreation of myself, right, to get there because of how important it is to inspire human beings to dream again. You know, my father was a very, very, very wise man, a very intelligent man, and a true Southern gentleman. He was Irish and Cherokee. And man, the Irish side of my family is interesting, right? But my father, he had this stubbornness about him that's known with the culture. And he told me once, he said, if we're gonna be stubborn, we have to be stubborn in the right things. If we're gonna be angry, we have to be angry in the right things. And I remember applying that to dreaming again. And my father told me when I was a kid, I remember I came home and I said, Dad, the teacher told me that I need to stop daydreaming and playing make-believe so much. And he said, well, she doesn't understand the words. He said, make believe is the most powerful thing a human being can do. He said, because we're all asleep, we're all dreaming, we may as well dream big, we may as well believe big. And that was really inspirational coming from a man who in the 70s, a man of mixed ancestry, came to Detroit, Michigan, opened up 5 Shell gas stations with his brothers, a brick distribution company. My father was extremely successful, and it was all coming from what I'm about to share with you, the ability to dream. So going back then to the stick man, here we are, and we see what we can achieve in real estate, whether it's investing or sales. And the dream goes into what? The conscious mind. You went and you studied, you got your license, and you did all of that on the conscious level. And then you started to ponder the possibilities of what you could earn and what you could buy and what you could do for your families. That's why you got into the business. It wasn't necessarily a passion about being a real estate agent. I don't know, maybe, but it was always about the possibilities, what you could do with a skill like that. Now, what I want you to get is that in doing that, you got emotionally involved with it. Just like the people that I used to hire. They were like, oh my gosh, you got tuition reimbursement. Yeah, I can go back to college. They would be so excited and never go back to college, right? Never move forward, never do the leadership training. And that's how it was when you got your license. You passed the test and you were all excited. You got emotionally involved with your career. And then it moved you into a new vibration. Your first day, your first open house, you know, I know about it. You were in there, you were nervous, you were trying to make sure everything was there and in place, and you were just excited and you were in love with it. And then you started to produce results. right? You were able to buy a particular house or a particular vehicle or something like that. It was a natural byproduct. So where does all of that really begin? It begins with creativity. I want you to just take a moment. I'm going to shut up just for a moment. I want you to go back to that time when you were pondering about the business that you're in and the goals that you had before you had obstacles and regulations and all of the other things that have happened in recent time to come along and hinder you or to restrict you from what it is that you really want to accomplish. Were you excited? So I want you to think about what you want now instead of what is. My very first salary at Disney, I was 23 years old. And they hired me, I think it was 1985. And my salary was $50,000. I was a child. I thought that was all of the money in the world. $50,000. And that was a lot of money in 1985. And I bought some stuff with it. Before I knew it, I actively built a life in partnership with another human being just because of my narrative and my programming, a life that I did not love living, a life that I didn't want. And when we broke up, all we could do was apologize to each other because we didn't know what we didn't know. What do you want? Is it scary? Because you want it to be scary. As soon as, and if you're taking notes, please write this down, put it on a sticky note. I don't ever want you to forget this. As soon as a human being knows something, we die. Write that down. As soon as I know something, I die. And so we have to always enter into a space where we're scaring ourselves a little, upsetting ourselves a little, disrupting things and moving into new vibrations. So here we are with the old programming represented with with X. And then we come along and we introduce that new thing that we want to do. It could be your physical health. It could be your sales goals. It could be a relationship. It could be anything. Just picture something right now that you've been avoiding and you know you really want it. It represents Y in the creative cloud. And then you put Y in consciously and you begin to make believe and imagine what that would be like. And then it pushes down into the subconscious. X and Y are in there together. Now, I have to tell you, everyone, that's when things start to get interesting. See, now your old programming and the new idea are in the space together. Your body is still responding to what? The X, the old programming. And you have to move your body into it. Now, this is the place where a lot of people begin to give up. They're like, I don't know, I just didn't feel right about it, because they're not really clear on how to distinguish what they feel. It creates anxiety and fear. And we misdiagnose the feeling because we haven't been trained to pay attention to that gut instinct, our body sensations. And then the mind, remember the amygdala? It's all triggered. And they're like, it's like warning, 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 move away from this opportunity. You're gonna die. And it really believes that it's protecting you by killing off your opportunities, your dreams. And that's what we call a terror barrier. Also originated with Dr. Thurman Fleet. And what happens in the terror barrier, if we don't move past it, is we end up going back to our comfort zone. For some people, that comfort zone is $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year. Where I'm at today in Scottsdale, I'm speaking at the Multifamily Women's Conference. And these women here, each one of them manage a minimum of $100 million in assets from all over the country. And they're here to hear me speak because they have terror barriers. See, it's not about what we achieve, it's whether or not we have actually achieved the lot. Well, it is about what we achieve, but did we achieve the results that we wanted in life? I'm not saying that a measure is $100 million in assets and they're managing them. These are 7-8-figure earners. And still they have barriers to what it is that they want to accomplish next. So we have to begin to stretch our minds. We have to stretch them into new dimensions. The older we get, I can tell you this as a scientist, the older we get, is it more challenging? Yeah. But don't believe that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's not true. One of the things that I know for a fact about the human mind is that it's malleable. And if I could, I'll use my finger. Let's just say this is a neuron, right? And the way that neuron fires is the result of a peptide that is attached to it. That's what gives you your personality. That's what gives you your addictions, your habits, all of that. And it just fires like that all the time. That's what Julie was talking about, those maps. And we have words to describe them. That's that person's personality. That's their character. That's just the way that they are. And then we say things like, oh, that person has good habits. That person is addicted to alcohol. Guys, it's all the same thing. It's a hormone. It's a peptide. And it's just giving you a way that you're firing. What if I told you you could stretch your mind so that you fire any way that you want to? You are not fixed. Now, the reticular activating system of the brain, when you create something, begins to go out and look for it. And this is how it works. A lot of people have heard of it. And there's a book I want you to get. It's written by a colleague of mine, Henrietta, and it's called Write It Down, Make It Happen. And she gets into the science of the reticular activating system. I won't go deep into it. But you can look here from this image, feel free to take a picture of it, or you can Google it or something like that. But it works this way. You know, you're talking to a friend and they're like, hey, I just got this cool new car and it was special ordered. Like I got this color and you're like, oh yeah, what does that look like? Oh, I never even heard of that. And then you leave home and you get to the next traffic stop and you stop and the car that your friend described drives right by you. The reticular activating system is your filtering system. And if you put it to work for you, it'll bring you the life that you want. This is why people do vision boards and things like that. Guys, I'm not big on vision boards. I've led them scientifically and things like that because I get the science behind it. But if you go back to what I said earlier, thoughts repeated often, thoughts charged with emotion, what you're doing then is taking the reticular activating system and having it work for you. It's just that simple. You're filtering out everything that's not the life you have already, and that's how we get reset. You have to create a bigger game and have your brain go and bring that. And it will pair with your vibration and it will pair with universal laws. And before you know it, it's manifesting. Now, when you create, I want you to get that you're creating a new reality. And I've heard so many people say this, but my husband in particular, Mike Skrdla, I remember me telling him when I met him, I was like, look, I do these things, I raise my vibration, I create in my mind. And so you might find it odd that I say some things on occasion that don't seem to be true. And he's a very honest man, right? And I remember him like kind of taking a lunge back and he said, what does that mean? And I told him, I said, well, you know, you might hear me say something like, yeah, this next deal that I'm going to do is $1 million deal. it's going to yield me a net of $1 and I have it all, of $1 million and I have it already and I'm excited about it. That was a big oops, right, Brian? And so he was like, okay. And he would hear me, everybody that I was talking to on the phone. I'm like, yeah, I just made $1 million in real estate. And they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, yeah. And I would say that and say that. And he was like, why are you saying that? And I said, because the moment that I created that reality by law, scientifically became the truth. Where? In the fourth dimension, in the quantum field. Go to Einstein's law of relativity and he'll describe it for you in detail. It's real. It happened. But now there's something that I have to break through in actions in order to pair with that new idea. And this is where it becomes important to safeguard your conversation, your community, and yourself. You have to ask yourself, am I performing in life right now while I'm on the couch here with Netflix and all, because that's my comfort zone? Am I performing like someone that could get $1 million deal manifested in one deal? Am I doing what that person would do? You see, the two realities begin to come together like this. And that old reality that I'll represent over here will eventually be overtaken by the new one. If you look at your life today, you've already done that. Many of us are not in the same place we were born. Some of us have already outperformed our parents and what they earned. And still, you want more. And where it's going to come from is your own creativity. I want you to get that those realities are both true. They both belong to you. All you have to do is just create. Charge it with emotion and don't back down by allowing any other thinking to come in. Don't reject it. You know, I teach a course on the universal laws that govern our success. And guys, I had to teach this powerfully to myself first. I had to get that, oh my gosh, by law, this thing that I'm doing must happen. And I use all of the laws to demonstrate that. The laws of man, municipal laws, civil laws, the laws of nature. When it rains, we're all subject to the law of nature. Even if you're indoors, you're still subject to it. Because if you go outside, you're going to go outside a particular way. And you can either prepare for it or you can be the victim of what's happening out there or having to survive it. Life is no different. Life is no different. You get to choose your life and the way that it goes. So I know that was a lot of information. I'm going to send Cari my PowerPoint to give you, but I want to make sure with the last few minutes, I answer any questions you might have.
Cari, that was fabulous.
I'm just looking at the chat.
Okay. Anybody want to chime in with Cari?
It's fascinating. I'll lean back into what is some of my challenges that's gone over the last year and a half and studying why I have addictions and how I've come into leaning into my old past. That's where I come from, some of the trauma conversations that I have, and, you know, being able to quiet the negative voice that's within you, that X, and then bring in the Y is something that I've never looked at. And I can't wait to read more about what you speak about, because I see there's a portion that I understand that I've gotten to, and I haven't gotten to breaking down that terror barrier. And so thank you for sharing. It's wonderful information.
Oh, thank you, Brian. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I am. And, you know, if there's any questions that you guys have, I'm going to send Cari later this evening, like I said, the PowerPoint, also some reading materials and other things to really help you to understand this more. what I presented today is part of a 3-day workshop. So I had to select, because we actually put people, we being myself and Rosa and other thought leaders that we bring in, we put them through the creative process where you actually get to create your next, right? So I'll send all of that format to Cari, and if you guys want it, you're welcome to it. And I just want to tell you, is nothing more honorable to receive from another human being than their time and attention. And you gave me yours, and I appreciate it so much. I wish you all a great deal of success. Go and just crush it. Thanks, Cari.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Cari. Thank you, Rosa. Wow. Wow. Bye, Rosa.
Hey, Cari, thank you for letting me stick around. That was fascinating, and it's fun to be here with all of you, so I appreciate it a ton.
She is literally so powerful, and you only saw her obviously on Zoom today, but to literally be in her presence is absolutely an amazing experience. And I am so fortunate to call her my friend and Rosa my friend. And I gotta go buy those two gals lunch now. They're just,
Yes, you do.
but she does very openly give up her time. Most of the time when we've had these speakers, these keynote speakers in the quarterly workshops, we have had to, those have been paid for speakers. She came out of the goodness of her heart and gave this today.
Oh, wow.
No charge. So I hold her in the highest esteem. You can find her on Facebook and also Rosa. They have beautiful profiles. It's just as beautiful as you saw today. And you are the 10 closest people that you surround yourselves with. So it is a true honor to have them around my world, as well as you met Renee Johnson and some of the others in the past. They're beautiful human beings, but she did certainly give us some challenges about those barriers, and what you need to do to break through and be very intentional about it. And it was neat for me to hear it from a different perspective than the other coaches or trainers that we've had on, whether it's in the weekly collective or in the workshop. She comes from the science of it. And it was nice to just peel it back and get right down to what we program ourselves in. It's not just all the statistical activities that we do, but really how we are setting ourselves up for failure or success based on what our subconscious and conscious mind are telling ourselves. So with that being said, anybody want to say anything before I close it up? All quiet.
Thank you, Cari, for all your hard work. Amazing people. We appreciate you.
Well, I thank you for that. You're going to see you'll see stuff come out for the next couple of weeks, and then I'm going to slowly but surely push everything onto the Smart Collective inside of my Facebook group. We keep growing all day today. I invited more realtors and things like that from across the country. So we're up to almost 550 people today.
Wow.
Inside of Smart Collective. Anyone who is not in it, feel free to get a hold of me, but I'm going to grow what I've already started growing last year off of some of the things that I learned about Facebook groups and education inside that space. And so Julie, maybe you at some point want to everyone from across the country, because my friends and colleagues from across the country are inside of now as of yesterday afternoon. So I'm excited for it. It's going to grow, and it's going to grow up to another level again. So you guys have a great day. I appreciate all your time today, because I know that doing these things involves putting a big chunk of your time away. But if you do not have the link to online, let me know and I'll get you in there. But you'll have there'll be more collaboration as I open it up to the customers now. So that's it.
speakers and Michelle for helping out as well. Greatly appreciated all of you guys. Thank you so much.
Guys, have a great day. And Julie, thank you for your part too.
You're welcome. Thank you. Hope to see you all soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right.